No Mas, I was actually in a play in Los Angeles, and the actress that was my co-star in No Mas, she was also in the play. And I had always had it in my head I wanted to do a divorce short or potential divorce short. And I'm from New York City. I was born and raised in New York City, and there's a large Hispanic population there in New York. And so I knew a lot of friends that were Cuban, Puerto Rican, Spanish, Argentine, and Laura Olivier is from Argentina and has that really thick accent. So it was genuine. Yeah, it was real. So after the play was, so when you do a play, you spend a lot of time with these people, right? With rehearsal and such. So there's a lot of downtime. So you get to know one another. So after the play, the run was over, I approached Laura. I called her. I go, look, I have an idea for a short I want to do about a couple that's going through potentially a divorce because of me cheating on her years prior. And she said, okay, I'd be interested in it. I said, look, it's going to be intense. She goes, no problem. So I wrote it. We went back and forth on it. I got a lot of input with her on her part because look, I can write for anyone, but I'm not a woman. So I thought it was very important for her to get her take on it. So she had a lot of input in terms of the character. And because she's a stage actor and I'm a stage actor, when we didn't do a ton of rehearsing, like live, like physical rehearsing, because this was going on. This was post COVID, so COVID was all, but it was still lingering here in America. So it was hard to get together um, one on one, but we did a lot of rehearsal via Zoom, just like this. But then once we went on, in fact, it was filmed at her house. That's filmed at her actual house. So once the film crew got there and we did it, we rehearsed it maybe for 5 minutes. It was literally like live. Um, we knew our lines because we're theater actors again. And a lot of the actions that came out of it were completely organic. Like there's a part in Nomos where she cries and I wipe her tear. I did not write that in the script. That literally happened organically. She was doing her lines, and in one of her monologues, she started to cry, and I just instinctively reached out and wiped her tear. So it was great because it was so powerful. It was a pleasure to work with her, and a lot of people that have gone through that in their relationships, like I get this comment a lot, they can relate to it. They felt it was very realistic. So they just they just came to me. Like some people think like they write because of past experiences, life experiences. I don't have to do that. I don't, I can write about things I've never gone through, but have seen, read, heard of. Uh, and I Can't Save You was, I Can't Save You is actually from a screenplay I've written, and there's a scene in it where they are divorced in this film. They're divorced, and he's trying to reconnect with his daughter, and um, then the whole scene transpires. Like I'm married, never been divorced, so I haven't gone through that. I have a son, but as an actor, you just look for things that are powerful. For me, especially if it's going to be a dramatic piece, right? And the two characters in No Mas and I Can't Save You are completely different. No Mas is much more over the top, much more of a physical character, whereas I Can't Save You, he's much more understated. and he's just lost. He's a lost character. I like characters that when they become lost and life is not going the way they want it to, what do they do, right? When you hit a when you hit a roadblock, when you hit a crisis in your life, what do you do? And the character in I Can't Save You is he's torn because he's lost his well, he doesn't have a connection to his daughter anymore, and he's not quite over the divorce of his wife. And she is. He's already moved on. And that comes out in I Can't Save You and the things that he says. But he comes to the realization that look, we're divorced and there's no going back to that, right? So it's basically let's salvage the relationship I have with my daughter, get it going again. So yeah, I mean, that's another one. I get tremendous response from I Can't Save You with the car scene and then with the montage, how it kind of really wraps up in 4.5 minutes where they are in the storyline. What's that? That's so funny. Yes, I would love to. I actually do very well in film festivals in India. You guys are great. You guys have some really first class festivals. And I've met several people in the film festival community, on via entering, not physically meeting or even talking. Everything's social media, right? You speak on Instagram, you text that way. I would love to. In fact, it's so funny you say that. I would love to do a storyline. I already have it in my head about a romance with an American and someone in India, and then just the cultural differences, and then how they how they manage through that, because America is different than where from India. We have different customs, and um, so I would love to because you guys have some fantastic actors. You have great films coming out of there, and your film festivals are top notch. Absolutely. It's extremely important. Doing a film that is based, it's not like a fantasy, right? So if you're doing films with like couples or families, or you really want to do it to where it's believable, right? And where people can say to you, "Oh, I can relate to that." I get that a lot. I get that a lot, especially in those two films where they say, "I've been through that. I have a family member has been through that, through divorce or separation." Um, it has to be realistic. So in I Can't Save You, I killed my partner in the line of duty. I'm a police officer. So I did a lot of research. If that happened in real life, if you killed your partner in the line of duty, what would happen? So what would normally happen here in America is you go on trial. If you were found not guilty because it was an accident, it was in the line of duty, then you can be reinstated with full pay. But there still could be some tension within the station that you work because some officers would say, "Listen, you should have been more careful," and then others would say, "Well, it was an accident; it was in the line of duty." So and that has happened here. I know of a case that does has happened, and it just causes so much life in your family life. You know what I mean? Because then you take that you take that stress home with you, and it becomes a real burden on your partner. And a lot of times, just things just don't don't work out because of it. You know. So it's very important. It's very important for some if you're writing something like that The audience has to feel like, oh, I can see that happening. Well, the biggest thing, we live in a world now where you can really like grab your iPhone, right, and film stuff. 25 years ago, you needed a camera crew, you needed all this equipment. Now you can film stuff on your phone, you can make shorts. Shorts are a very big thing now, where 20 years ago they really weren't that big. Um, keep creating, keep creating, keep writing, keep filming. Find people that in the industry that you trust and you respect, and get their opinion. Because look, we want to create things, right, as artists, but you still want them to be some sort of commercial success, right? It can't be all about what I'm writing, I feel is great, and it doesn't relate to people. It doesn't resonate with people. So that's what I would do. I have people that I work with in the background that when I do write a script, I let them at it and I listen to advice. Always listen to advice. Don't be so stubborn in terms of, because we get very possessive of our work. Don't be so stubborn and say, you should always listen to someone that you trust and say, because they have a different opinion on it. Because sometimes you get very close to your work, and sometimes you need someone to look at it that's not so tied into it, you know. But just really just keep creating. Um, looks with people. Some things will resonate less. Not everyone's gonna like your work. No, in there watching of your film, you would hope that the majority of those 100 would like your work, right? Because that's really a testament. But it's constantly filming, writing, and creating. But you have to be very honest with yourself. So listen to other people's advice, but just keep at it, because like everything I do now has gotten a little better. I'm going to do a full feature documentary on a New York City fireman I grew up with, who was in the World Trade Center when it was attacked. He was the last fireman out. So I grew up with him. He was a teacher in my high school, so I've known him my basically my adult life. And then I'm doing another film, doing a comedy, romance comedy, that'll be about 45 minutes. So I'm getting longer in my films. So bigger scenes, more actors, outdoor shots, the whole bit. And this documentary is going to be something completely different. It's going to be at least an hour. So all this is going to be able to stream on all the major platforms. Honestly, right now, the biggest thing is time. The biggest thing is time, and what projects. I have other projects I want to do as well, but it's really okay. You have to prioritize them, and then raise the money, figure out where to shoot it, do all the production parts of it, producing all that stuff. So, but most of it's just time. And I have like 4 projects I want to do. Okay, which one comes first, right? And then just do them. But um, like I do a lot of comedies, but I haven't filmed them. So I'm going to start filming some comedies, because I'm not just a dramatic guy. I can also do comedy and do romance to where it's not divorce or that kind of strife, where it's happy. So anyway, yeah. So just keep growing. Honestly, I guess I'm kind of rambling. I apologize. Keep growing as an artist. That's a great question. So when it comes to my new documentary I'm doing, I want people to see what first responders do in their lives, how it impacts people's lives. Like I've had people say in my films, well, I also wrote a book. I wrote a children's book that's out now and I'm selling in America. So I've done that. I've had people say, wow, that really inspires me, this, that, and other. I want this, especially the documentary, I want that to inspire people to understand what these people do that are either firemen or police, first responders, how they impact how they impact our lives, right? Like, a fireman could literally in their career have saved lives. I don't have that kind of job, but I'm an artist. I'm not a fireman. So we don't quite we don't quite understand what they do in their daily lives. You know what I mean? So that's really paying homage to first responders. And I think that's gonna have a really, really big overall appeal. And also my book. I wrote a children's book. It's a teaching book about kids and animals. And there's a theme behind it and message behind it. And it's very positive. It's about kids and what kids, kids 8 to 11 and 8 to 12 is kind of the age range I'm looking at. And it's all about a positive message. How do you deal with failure and success at that level? My first book is be a series of books. It's called The Adventures of Rex and Daisy. Um, sorry, that's the actual book, and it's two children and two dogs, and the dogs can talk in this world, and the dogs help the kids that they live with, the family, deal with problems. So that is like majorly inspiring, and the documentary will be, and then the other films are just more fun. But yeah, I mean, look, as an independent filmmaker, I mean, one of the biggest things is budget and raising money for it. Um, luckily now with technology, there's a lot you can do, but um, like for example, No Mas is just shot in that one kitchen area, but it's very impactful. So it's being concise on your time. Like no one's gonna have the time or the money to shoot a 10 minutes short and spend 4 hours doing it, right? Because if I shoot for 4 hours, it's great, but then I have to edit it, and that could take me 12 hours to edit it. 12 hours to edit a 10-minute film. So that takes time and that takes money. So I think you have to be really clear and concise. Like this movie I'm doing next, it's going to be shot in New York. It's got probably 10 location scenes, indoor, outdoor, restaurant, an office. There's going to be a beach scene. It's just mapping it all out and trying to be as clear and concise as you can be, right? Because I'm not working off a $20 million budget, so I don't have that luxury. Um, it's just being clear and concise and mapping it out prior. And if the work is really good, then everything else kind of falls in place. If the scenery looks fantastic, but the plot's not very good, well, then what's the point, right? So just being clear and concise and getting a very strict budget, so you know exactly what you're trying to do. Be prepared and shoot it, and then boom, keep going. That's actually a really good question because this is really interesting. When you enter all these film festivals, right, and you start to win, or you get a finalist, or you this and the other, you start to see other people, right, in the same film festivals. Like I I see this man's or this woman's, let's say her name is Nancy. I see Nancy's because you get the results after the fact. So I don't know who's also entered a film festival that I've entered, right? But then when you get the results, you start recognizing names. And there is a filmmaker in New York who invariably we just always bump into each other in the same film festivals, not physically seeing each other, right? Because they're most of them are online. But you wind up seeing them in the results, right? So this was around Easter here a couple of months ago. I actually contacted a filmmaker because I'd seen some of his work online. And I said, we should do a scene together. I had never met him, right? This is kind of a crazy story. I've never talked to the guy on like live or seen him. So I sent him a text message on Instagram, and his name is Frank. I said, Frank, hi, it's Steven, and we bump into each other all the time. I said, we should do a film together. I had an idea of doing a film about a mobster's mob. He's Italian, I'm Irish in real life, and he looks very Italian. I look Irish. And I said, I have an idea of doing a one shot scene. And he said, okay, write it. So start writing it and send it to him. But then as I'm writing it, his story takes on another life, right? I start to add characters to it. So it went from a 7 or 8 minute short to be probably at least 45 minutes now, and 10, 11 characters in it, like a full on cast, multiple scenes. But if I hadn't been doing shorts and been in film festivals, I would have never met him. Right. So I mean and that's the beauty of the internet. There's a Iranian filmmaker who wants to do a work with me, and it's really like, okay, well then how do we coordinate that? Like logistically, do I go to Iran? Is she coming to America? But just you're right, just the communication, like she's I don't know, it's 9:30 here p.m. and it's probably Friday morning for her. Like I have to turn my phone off at night because I will get text messages from film festival directors at seriously at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning because Europe's 8 hours ahead, and I'll get messages. So I literally turn my phone off. Or like to your point, if I do a call, like just did a podcast from someone who's in Liverpool, so it's just hard to get the times down. But it is what it is. It's a pleasure to be asked to do these things. It's a pleasure to talk to someone like you and your group.
Thank
So, it's part of the business. That's a good question because I like to do theater, so I do theater. So, but that's not something that really people can see, right? That's all local stuff. I do theater here in Los Angeles, so I really enjoy being on stage. Um, but things sort of just happen to me. Like now, I came up with the idea of doing a documentary. I've never done a documentary before, but because of the story about the fireman that I know, I find it to be inspiring and appealing.
you.
I never wrote a book before, but someone found me on Twitter on something, a short story I'd written that was on Twitter. She contacted me. She's a children's publisher in Florida and said, have you ever thought about writing a children's book? I said, no, I never had thought about it. I've written screenplays, I've written short stories. I've had stuff made, obviously, but I've never written a book. I never thought about it. So I did a little research on it, contacted her back. Again, we didn't talk. This is all text messaging, right? I said, what age group are you looking at? She gave me an age group. And 6 hours and 2 days later, I came up with this concept
Uh,
of Rex and Daisy. So you just don't know. And then this book, there's going to be a series of books. It's called The Adventures, so it'll be plural. I'll write about the children. I'll write about the dogs. I'll write about different issues. So the book thing, I mean, that can be pretty big too, because books are different than my films because you can see my films on film festivals. You can see them online, but a book is something this is tangible. You
right.
can own, you can keep. And I started doing readings to schools. I'll go and read to children in like first grade, second grade, third grade, kindergarten, and the response has been fantastic. It's on my Instagram page. You'll find that I have a YouTube page where I post videos of me speaking, reading from the book, a little, not the entire book, but a little, let's say a chapter. And then the kids ask me questions. So I'm going to expand on the books. I got that one film I'm doing. We're going to shoot it hopefully in September in New York. And then I have the documentary in October. Then I have another comedy I have half filmed that will be done in maybe November or December. And then, I don't know I don't know what's around a corner. Like I've had people hiring me to be ghostwriters now. So I have someone who's trying to write a novel contact me and said, "Would you be my ghostwriter?" So I'll be a ghostwriter on a spy novel that I'm going to do. But that takes time, right? So, you're looking at 3 months worth of work on writing a 300-page novel as a ghostwriter. So that now will take me into 25, right? That'll take me into the spring of 25. Yeah. It's just really like life experiences. Um, I can't pinpoint, one thing or another. My life, I started out in business. I had no interest in being an artist at all, none. And then in my late 20s, so I worked for a guy on Wall Street who was a mentor of mine, and he committed suicide. And that really shook me up. It changed my world. And I was working in a computer company, and I had a lot of free time because I was working remote. This is when there was no such thing. So I was living in an area I didn't have any friends. So I had an apartment, and I had all this free time at night, right? Because I didn't know anybody. So I started writing a story about working for this commodity trader in New York in the World Trade Center, and wrote it. My father was a bartender who had someone who worked for him who was a writer, a professional writer, who had things published in magazines and wrote a novel. So I sent my father this 20-page short and it was basically a cathartic experience for me. It was sort of just expressing working for this man and his suicide and how it affected me because I was 20. I was 20, 21 years old. And as a result, when I sent the story to my father, he gave it to this writer. The writer called me and said, "Look, you have talent. This is a classic story, coming of age story for a boy. Um, you have a natural gift of writing, and you should think about doing that." And I literally changed my life at that point. I quit the business world. I started being a bartender because I needed the flexibility. I started acting. I started doing theater. I'd never done a play in my life. And I walked to an audition or a musical of all things. I had to sing, I had to dance. I got cast in it and realized I loved it. And then moved out to California. Well, it was either stay in New York and do theater, right? Because that's a big theater area, or come out to California and do more film. So I had a job as a bartender it was a restaurant. It was Planet Hollywood. Back in the day it was very popular in America. So there was a Planet Hollywood in Southern California. So I transferred from the one in Washington, D.C., where I was living at the time. I transferred from there to out here in LA, in Los Angeles, and literally just didn't know any. I'd never been west of Texas. I'd never been to California. So I came out here knowing nobody, but I had a job and then just started writing, started doing it. But then I got in a motorcycle accident and I had to quit everything. I couldn't. I was here 2 years. I got my SAG card. I was getting acting work. I was on TV a couple of times, within a couple of movies, and then I had a bad motorcycle accident and couldn't walk for 6 months. So I ran out of money, and I had to go back to work. So I went back to the corporate world and left acting and writing behind. I got married, had a son, we bought a house. I did that whole thing, right? And then right around, right before COVID, actually, right around 2020, I have a friend who's an actor, and she said, "Hey, now they do reels now." I go, "What's a reel?" Well, you can go and you can film. They'll film you doing a scene. It's short, and it's a way for people to use you. You can use it as an audition tape because 20 years prior, there was no such thing as online auditions, right? You had to go physically and audition. You had to mail out headshots. So I started doing that, and it just I did the reels, and then I did a play. I'd done a play in 20 years. Did the play. I met Laura. I wrote No Mas. Then I wrote a second one called The Righteous. Filmed that. Then I did I Can't Save You, the third one. And now I did the book.